Aurelia, the title for this session, Strong Women in an Equal World, was your suggestion, and I'm usually quite resistant to taking suggestions for these titles. I have you, and the next one, Sabine, also suggested her titles, and I took it, so I wasn't very consequential here. But what was in the back of your mind? Strong women in an equal world. What does that mean to you? Why did you think this might be a fitting title for this discussion?
I wanted to start with a bit of hope. In Italy, we have a female prime minister. I think when we look to Germany, a lot of Germans still are missing Mutti Angela Merkel. And maybe eventually in the US, we are going to have a female president. So I wanted to start with a bit of hope when we enter into the discussion. And on the other hand side, we all know there's still a long way to go when we want to achieve true equality. So 3 weeks ago, the new gender pay gap statistics came out, and there is still 16.7% difference in pay between men and women. And when we look down to the number of non-explainable difference why women are paid less than men, it's still 6.1%. So there's still a way to go, but there is still a lot of hope, I think. And I think on a day like this, when we have so many women in the audience, we need to put hope in the center, and we need to put the focus in the center what we want to really achieve.
It's never a bad thing to have some hope right at the beginning. You're originally from Liechtenstein, where you again live today. You studied law, you worked as a lawyer, you worked in management, you worked in the management of SME, and then you went into politics, becoming Minister for Justice, Foreign Affairs and Culture at 33 years old, I think it was,
yes,
in Liechtenstein. Tell us a little bit about what that meant for you, becoming minister so young in a field that's usually male-dominated.
I mean, looking back at my very, very beginning in politics, I mean, that was almost suicidal what I did. I was living abroad for over 10 years, and then I was asked whether I wanted to join politics and do a campaign, and at the end I was elected, and the beginning was extremely hard. I had less team members than my male colleagues, minister colleagues had. I was extremely unexperienced, and my team was extremely young. So the beginning was a rough time. I needed to learn a lot. I needed to grow a lot. And after maybe a year or two, I started to really understand how an administration is functioning, how politics, as it is functioning. And then I started to have, fun is the wrong word, but most probably pleasure in what I'm really doing, and realizing that every single person of us can have an impact and make a change.
Is it different? You mentioned the USA, and obviously politics and ministers and presidents there are known often globally, but it's a country of what, 400 million people, so it's quite anonymous. In Liechtenstein, you kind of know everyone, right? You know all your voters, you know all your neighbors. So is it how does it differ running or co-running a country that's basically a small city in the end?
Yeah, I think there are two different aspects. I mean, as a country, we are tiny, small. So compared to the US, of course, there is no real political power or any power we have. But at the same time, even though my country is so small, you have to do the same things as a sovereign country, as a big country does. So we need our own education policy, we need our own foreign policy. So we need to decide whether we want to be dependent or independent in terms of energy. So we need to do a lot of things big country do as well. So sovereignty has an extremely high cost. And at the same time, you know everybody. So you go to the street and almost 100% of the people in Liechtenstein know you. So the gap is enormously big. So the nicest example I always have in mind, I speak at the UN on Friday afternoon to the world. I come back home, and on the Friday evening, I get out of my plane and I join the fireman campaign, and they have new uniforms and introduce the new uniforms to the audience. So the gap is enormously big, and I enjoyed that.
as I said, worked in different fields. You're now working in business, also for smzh as a senior advisor. How does it differ, the business world from politics? Is it all the same? Not just in terms of gender and gender diversity, but in general, how things are being done, how discussions are being held. What's the biggest difference you feel?
I mean, in politics, it's always finding about majorities. How can you convince people, other politicians, your parliament, to find a majority? So politics is counting votes for what you want or you aim to achieve. And now working in a very entrepreneurial environment, especially at smzh, I mean, we have a boss, we bring up a good idea, and of course the idea is being discussed and not everything is just ticked off. But bringing up good ideas, we see, can we afford it or not, and things then happen. So it's a lot different. It's less finding majorities to find somehow a middle way. It's having a vision and the desire and the discussion to go there.
In our briefing discussion, when we talked about strong women in an equal world and what we could discuss and address, you said that sometimes you feel that we're focusing on the wrong things. We're not discussing the big things, but tiny things that might not make the change that we want to see. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes. I mean, I think at the end it comes down to the question that I personally became a bit tired to talk about quotas. At the beginning of my career, when I was very young, I always said, oh, quota, I'm against quotas. I mean, I didn't want to be a quota woman being minister. I didn't want to be a quota woman. So I always wanted to be seen as somebody who is working hard to achieve where I was at the end. And then in the middle of my career, I started to realize, most probably I was a quota woman. Because when I was elected and supported by my party, there were two men and they wanted a young, well-educated woman to stand in the middle. So I needed to realize most probably I am a quota woman, even though I didn't want to be one. And at the same time, as a big feminist, I wanted to see more women stepping into my shoes and following my career path, and they didn't come. So we didn't have more women in politics, and we didn't have more women in economy or in our society that really took responsibility. So that made me somehow sad, and I started to say, most probably we need a quota in order to be able to change something in society. And now again, years later, everybody's speaking about quotas, and we have certain amount of quotas in certain areas, but still we are not where I hope, or where I would hope we should be. And the progress we as countries make, especially Switzerland and my super conservative country, Liechtenstein, we are not really progressing fast enough. And what I think is we would need more leaders, like, for example, the CEO of smzh, he's sitting here, Xim Hasani, he's hiring the best people he's finding. So in my office, I share the office, when I come to the office in Zurich, I share my office with 6 other people. 4 of the 6 people are women. So we need more CEOs, people that stand at the front, that walk the talk and just hire the people they really want, and that most probably each of us has a bias in something. But at the end, I think we need to know what we want to achieve. I didn't ask our CEO whether he hires women because half of our customers are women. I didn't ask him about that. I don't know if it's an intuitive decision of him, or if it's like a decision he really wants to make because he wants to have a lot of women in his office. But at the end, we all know we need diverse teams in order to have profit. And our customers, half of our customers, are women.
We also discussed in the briefing, in our briefing call, that we would address a not super comfortable topic for you, but I think it makes sense to do that. And I have to read this because I have to make sure I get this right. From 2020 to 2022, you've been the subject of investigations in Liechtenstein, not in Switzerland.
Yes.
You were accused of misappropriating funds as part of your duties as minister, and in the process, you were voted out of your position with a no-confidence vote. You've been acquitted of all of these charges. Ultimately, after many
Yes.
processes, And now there are ongoing preliminary investigations into misusing public money to fund your own women's party. And you've also said before that imagine having 6 years of this while you're living a life, while you're raising a family, while you're doing a job. Maybe for anyone who hasn't been in this position and in these shoes, what was this like, and how do you reflect on it today after all this has happened?
I mean, that's honestly a very difficult discussion, and it's a difficult question to answer. I think everybody who was ever in front of court can understand how extremely difficult it is. It throws you out of your of your life, and even though you know nothing will come out of the process, I will be spoken free. I always knew that, but it costs you hundreds of thousands of Swiss francs to explain, to pay your lawyers, and at the end to finish such a court proceeding. So it was a very difficult time. And what I personally found very difficult, knowing that if I were a man, that would have never happened. That was the most difficult part in the whole process. I wanted to, I mean, for all those who don't know it, the beginning of the whole thing was that I, in an interview, said, I want to become Prime Minister of Liechtenstein. That was my ultimate aim. I was 11 years in politics, and I was asking myself, what do I do with my career? And I said, really adored. I adored politics. I really loved it. And I thought, as a small country, all the connections I had, they were extremely helpful. So I thought, I really asked myself, and I thought, I can do it. I think I can do it. So I officially said I would like to become Prime Minister, and that was the beginning of the end of my career. And ultimately, it ended in a huge court proceeding that costed me hundreds of thousands of Swiss francs. And that was somehow a difficult thing for me to accept, a very how patriarchalic and male-dominated the structure can be.
So when you say this wouldn't have happened as a man, the entire thing wouldn't have happened, or the scrutiny wouldn't have been there, or the spotlight, or what do you think would have missed as a male minister?
I mean, the whole thing began because I, as a woman, didn't ask my party first whether I'm allowed to say I would like to become Prime Minister.
Okay,
that was the whole beginning of the whole thing.
So the statement was made before consulting with your party, so to say?
Yes. Yes. Because they would have said no. So I just officially... And maybe there is just one thing that might be interesting for the audience. Of course, I checked extremely carefully before I did the interview. I discussed with my closest team what is the worst case scenario that might come out of when I officially say I would like to become Prime Minister. So we consulted thoroughly. And the ultimate worst case scenario we thought could eventually, worst case come out is that I'm sitting on a podium like we're sitting here today, and the today existing or the by then Prime Minister would sit in front of me, and we would have like kind of a fight on stage, and at the end the hands go up for the Prime Minister and the hands go up for me, and I lose it. So he has more votes. That was the ultimate worst case scenario we had. And like at the end, like 6 years of court thing came out. So I think one thing I learned is that we need to accept structures. I'm a fast-moving person. I speak quickly. I think quickly. I do things quickly. I drive quick. Everything needs to be fast in my life, so I'm very impatient as a person. So I thought, if I want my country to change and to see a change, I can do it now. But the society needs time to change. Patriarchal structures need time to change. This is what I learned.
I mean, politics is very much leading for others. You know, you do things voted by your voters in the end and trying to do the best for them and the country. But you also said that it's up to everyone individually to do something, to change something, to get on their feet. You have a bunch of powerful women in front of you. Any messages, any campaigning slogans you would like to leave them with when they go out, what they should be doing or thinking about, changing whatever they want to change?
I mean, one thing, I wish there would be a bit more men sitting in here today.
I agree.
Because, you agree, thank you.
Actually, a fun fact was when we started these women's summits in 2016, 2017, we wanted to introduce a men's quota, actually, of 15%. And not once did we hit it, so we also failed with quotas.
And I wouldn't have accepted your invitation if only women would have been sitting here. So great, they're sitting here. No, but what I wanted to say is, I think we need more role models like my CEO, smzh, or the gentleman from L'Oreal who was speaking before, or as well Miriam Bisang that was speaking before. I think we need more role models on both sides. Like Miriam Bisang, who said she has 3 kids and she raised them during stepping up an amazing career. So young people need to see it can be done, but we as well need surroundings in which women and men can evolve and develop. So everybody of us has a responsibility to show an environment in which people can decide, do they want to have family or not, and combine family and work and everything. So we need to give the right area in which people can grow. And that's a question. I think personally, politics has a big step to do in terms of education, of kita, daycare, etc. Politics has a lot to do, but at the end it comes down to the single person, to the leaders that decide or that are alert. Am I being biased when I hire this person or this person? Where is the bias? I have bias as well. I realize constantly that I have a bias. I think we should need to do salary comparison, not who earns more or less, but at the end, are the women and men equally paid? I think we should have a strong focus on that. So there are certain areas, and there's like leaders, there are a lot of leaders in here today. I think all women and men, all people, each and every single of us has a responsibility when we talk and judge about other people to be alert. Is it fair or not? Where is my own bias? I know I have biases. So when I speak to young women, I sometimes think, oh, they might get pregnant, they will be out of office for half a year or maybe a year, they won't return. So there is a lot of bias in each of us, and we should speak more about it.
Aurelia, thank you so much for the honesty and the openness and sharing this story of your life with us. Thank you.
Thank you.